Hey, let's do this. Year ago, August 2021. What were the big games? Where are they at now? How do you feel about them now that you've either backed them, or waiting for them, backed them, got them, or backed them, and they're somewhere out in the nebulous, never regions of space, China, wherever else, producers' minds still. Let's talk about where things are at a year ago now that we are in August of 2022. Let's do this. Can I just say, this is something that I really, really hate. I'm going to talk about Gamefound here at the beginning, just as a side tangent before I get into the actual games. And that's because I'm looking at Gamefound right now. And right, you've got this one that's raised $100,000. Great, it's over $100,000. Great. But then you have one that's upcoming already at the top. The fact that you've got these three that were just literally announced at the beginning of Gen Con that are crowding out games that should be up higher because they're active and they're already currently funding, right? Like, if I was one of these games that are currently funding, I'd kind of be a little irritated. Like, Gamefound, like, actively promote the things that are making you money already currently. Don't shove the stuff that's not even having a date yet at some time, maybe even in 2023, out there. Like, that's kind of off-putting if I'm looking at Gamefound and I'm not one of the super big ones that's going to be up at the top all the time. Like, that would kind of rub me the wrong way. And so, again, just you've only got 2 rows here of the active ones. And I'm not sure that there's much more than that, to be frank with you, but at the same time, you're crowding these in for the sake of doing it. And whoever's doing this algorithm or this programming, you know, come on. So we're going to start with Arydia. Arydia, this was one of the biggest ones of the year, $1.3 million. I mean, they had a true funding goal of something like, what, like $700,000 to begin with, and people were like, oh, I don't know if they can do that. Well, they did it, and you know what? They didn't cancel either, so I give them a lot of kudos. So, you know what? I backed it. You know, I backed this for $1 because I wasn't sure at the time. I'll be frank with you. As you can see here, I did not upgrade it. I looked at this and I said, no, this is too minutia. This is too small. This is going to be a great game. People are going to espouse it. People are going to love it. People are going to solo it. People are going to mage knight it. People are going to euthanize it. Yeah, I went there, euthanize it. Not euthanasia, but euthanize it. I'm getting close there, though. In terms of, wow, this is the greatest thing. If you can't get it played, if you can't get it played, this is never going to be a great game for you. And that's where I went with this. Is there going to be too much small stuff? I mean, just look at this board, right? Like, I feel like this is almost a solo setup. I mean, it's probably a 4-person setup. There's probably not much less for a 4-person setup than a 1-person setup in that sense. And it reminds me very much, now that I look at it, of Euthia just from the top down. And I'm glad, actually, I didn't back it because, as I said in the other video, 1 campaign game is too many and 10 campaign games is never enough. And it's just going to be everything you want, only in a video game format as a board game. So again, I was pre-hype, probably, you know, like 7 or 8 out of 10. Now I'm like 2, you know, I'm great. I'm glad I passed on this. I'm happy that I did not get in on this, because then I'm not going to feel really bad if it was collecting dust on my shelf, not doing anything. Stretch goals, I mean, they're unlocking stuff. They have the little pre-painted miniatures, engraved dice. Take that for what you will. I mean, they unlocked basically some deluxeifications, a little bit of extras. So that's cool. That's cool that they did that. I have no problem with it. It's got a pedigree that people loved. Now, this is a vast departure from Xayah. So again, my biggest concern and the biggest echoing I said during the campaign was, if you are looking at this and going, I like Xayah, I should get this one. No, this is something completely different, and you should be avoiding this if that was the reason you were backing it. And I have a feeling, just like Root in that sense, you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna look at this, get this, and go, oh geez, what did I get? What did I get myself in for? And turn it around and sell it. I think you're gonna have a lot of people that are gonna do that. And that's okay, but that's also why I stayed away from it. It's an open world, minutia, RPG-esque, down to exploring basements, cellars, rat-filled houses of the open countryside. So take that for what you will. There's a lot going on. There's an absolute monster amount of what's going on here. And I would love this game. I would just never get a great chance to play it extensively. That would be my biggest fear. And that's ultimately why I didn't want to spend $165 on it, or more like really $190, because let's be honest, who's not actually going to get the expansion here? So where are things at then? Now that we've said that, now that we've seen that, where are things at in terms of the updates? Now they have the latest update here less than a month ago, at the end of the last month, and an estimated timeline right now. Pledge Manager still open, so I guess I could still upgrade my pledge if I really wanted to. June 2023. So what is the actual delivery date that they mentioned originally? You can see it was December. Well, that's clearly not going to be the case. And June, 6 months over, that's about what I'd expect. And they're basically just saying we have a high standard of stuff and we're not going to compromise on it, so it's going to cost us 6 months. And part of that is going to be these miniatures, and especially with the pre-painting. I mean, that was the big issue with Street Fighter, right? I have that Street Fighter miniature pre-painted game, which they look really, really good, probably the best pre-painted you'll ever see, but they suffered so many delays because of it. Now, granted, some of it was Sony and the IP itself, but some of it was just the pre-painting. And so that's what some of this is probably going to be in that aspect of just the production, the details that you can see that they're going over here about doing the changes with Panda. So take it for what you will. I'm glad I passed on this, as weird as that is to say. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a blockbuster game and people are going to be all over it and people are going to be gushing at it, especially sort of like they're doing with Oathsworn, where you're going to get a couple people getting it early and then just driving the hype up. But it's going to be what it's going to be, and we'll see where it ends up in the end. But I guess we're probably going to be talking about it more in the lines of a year from now rather than 10 or even 9 months from now. So take that for what you will. That was Arydia. The other big funder of the month, this was a huge surprise, I think, to a lot of people, me included, Cardboard Alchemy's Flamecraft. I mean, who would have thought that a cute dragon chef-esque light style worker placement game was going to raise over $2 million. I had the over under at maybe like 50,000 but they killed it. It wasn't because they threw in like super high pledge levels. I mean, there was one here for $79 which gets you colored Kickstarter miniatures, which you can't see, which is right above me, the Flamekeeper, as in the window right now, but it had 30,000 backers. That's why it raised so much money, and that's a freaking metric ton. And this is going to be a light game, but people really got in on it of the aesthetic. And that's okay. You know what? If this is going to be a game that gets to the table, especially from a lighter filler side of things, because we don't frankly have a ton of light worker placement style games that are good gateway games in that sense, right? You've got Lords of Waterdeep, you've got your Champions of Midgard, you've got those ilks, but you don't have a ton like this. And so if that's enticing and the thematic incorporation is going to get more people to play it, I'm all for it. I just think that, like I said during the campaign extensively, I didn't see a reason to get any of the higher pledge levels because it was all like deluxeifications. And even the lower pledge level, I don't think the standard edition stretch goals or the Kickstarter exclusive stuff was gameplay. So I think you could have easily passed on it from that aspect, because I don't think you're missing, like, you don't see any of the Kickstarter exclusive stuff there, right? Deluxe edition is essentially what you're missing with the miniatures right here. And a little bit deluxe here, which I'm completely okay with missing. Completely okay with missing. I'm going to throw out inserts in half my games anyway. I'm going to do that in the future, I think. So I'm not missing too much on that side of things. All of the OCD people in the audience are like, oh, they're cringing when I say that. And then they had a bunch of other stuff down here. They had, t-shirts and plushies and I think some other stuff that you could add on here. Dragon miniatures, fancy miniatures, money, coins, art. There you go. There's the plushie. See, I wasn't making it up. You guys were like, oh, he's just spitballing random stuff that comes out of his mouth randomly in these situations. No, I looked at this campaign. I know this campaign. But this was supposed to be delivered in July of 2022, right? Whoops, last month. So where are things at? Well, actually, surprisingly, they're actually arriving in port this month. So from the time of me filming, this was about a week earlier. So take it for what you will. They're going to be actually fulfilling relatively close. Good job, Cardboard Alchemy. I'm impressed. Mission Catastrophe, Flamecraft. Yeah. Now, if my Dwellings of Elderville, was that second or third print? I can't remember which printing. Second printing, maybe? If that one comes sometime this month, which it's not, I think it's actually September now, I'll be really impressed, because that's, on time. On time. Kudos to them. We'll see how this stacks up and how this, takes flight as people get it in the next month or so, and how hot it becomes on the hotness. So this might not be the last time you see it talked about on this channel in the next month. There you go. That's Flamecraft. Next up, speaking of things that have actually delivered, we'll skip over here for a second. We'll go to Wild Serengeti. This was a game from Bad Comet, which raised, again, nearly $250,000 and almost 5,000 backers for a very, very beautifully meeple-driven sort of scenic, I don't want to say set collection, not really an engine builder in that sense, but playing these animals, creating these scenes, matching the patterns that you had to do, essentially. And they had some stretch goals here. These are awesome looking. Like, I just love these. Give me like these in Animal Upon Animal, right? Like, that is a highly underrated game, by the way. That's a whole side conversation as well. Like, you didn't think you'd see a channel over like 1,000 subscribers talking about Animal Upon Animal, right? That's actually probably one of my top 15 or 20 games played, having kids, by the way. Again, whole nother side conversation here. This one has been in backers' hands, I think, for quite a while. Puzzle solving, set collection, engine. I guess there is an engine building to it, so I guess I'm wrong. So what you're doing is you're placing these meeples down on the maps, creating patterns, creating various scenes that you're matching, sort of like Animal Upon Animal, the balance bridge that I have behind me in the background that you can't see. This was was supposed to deliver in July 2022, and they were way early, I think. Let's actually go check this out. Yeah, their fulfillment completed in June. So this is the rare Kickstarter that was ahead of it. So yeah, take that for what you will. And it's got a relatively solid rating, I think, over on Board Game Geek right now. Yeah, if we go over to Board Game Geek here, it's got a 7.4 rating, which is pretty good, only considering it only has 521 ratings. So I think it's available at retail. I'm not really sure, to be frank with you. People are selling it for a marked up price in the secondary market, which I would expect, because if it's not widely available at retail, then you can get what you want. Now, 1 to 4 player game. Yeah, I think this is cool. I just wasn't sold on the gameplay because it reminded me a little bit too much of Everdell when I was looking at the components going, is that wooden tree of Everdell really something I need? Or is this little bedrock something I really want? And it's totally superfluous, just like the Everdell tree. And I said, you know what, that's going to be a turnoff for me. I'm not paying for that right now. So this is a game that I probably will end up like trying to trade for at some point, just like I did Meeples and Monsters, that Kickstarter edition for that, because it's enticing enough that I want to try it out, but it's not enticing enough to me to necessarily buy it or back it from that aspect. So that's doing good so far. So that is in people's hands. Let's go to the next one here. Hop back over to Gamefound. Lands of Galzyr, Snowdale. This is the one I got to try out beforehand as well. And let's see where things are at. I think they're doing relatively well. Not nearly as much money as the other open world campaign story-driven games that went in 2021, sort of the trend. It only raised just over 200,000 euros, which comparatively was a lot less. But let's see where things stand. I was probably an 8 or so pre-campaign. I was probably a 7, just realizing that this was a great solo game when I played it. And you're taking the role of one of these creatures, you're doing a lot of dice rolling, you're doing a lot of skill and ability checks, and you're upgrading your character via the cards that you have in the stories that are going to be driven. You have official quests and you have side quests, and you'll be traveling around this large map and upgrading your skills based on this little diagram, or this little circular, I can't think of a word right now. Based on this, it's going to allocate the dice appropriately, and the dice are going to have asymmetric sides that are going to allow you to get various successes or fails. It's got a little bit of an app or a story-driven system. It's not really an app, but it's a story-driven system that takes a lot of the minutia and reading out of it. And this big open world map that you're going to be traveling on between months, days, as well as weather conditions. So let's see where things are at. Literally, the day before I film this, they've got an update here. Pledge Manager is fully closed, but you can still pre-order it. Where are things at right now? Freight shipping is actually underway. Complete sometime this month, and then region-specific updates are going to be, probably in the next 1 to 2 months after that, I would guess. So there's the ship. Quartermaster Logistics is the one fulfilling it. So yeah, I would say probably in the next month or two, you're going to have your game. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. So yeah, that seems to be relatively on time. Let's check, when was it actually supposed to be delivered? So June 2022, and we hop back over here to the original page. That's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Yeah, you'll get it about 2-3 months late, depending on where you are in the world. Yeah, there you go. I think people are going to like this. It's not going to be to everyone's ilk, but people are going to like it that really do. I mean, I agree with that Quackalo quote as much as that is overhyped from, that aspect of things. If you like more of the storytelling, quest-driven with some dice, because this was the biggest issue, the dice, you really will like this game. So there you go. Lands of Galzyr. Now we're going to stay over on Gamefound. We're going to go over to the Master of the Universe. This one is the one from Archon that was on Gamefound as opposed to the Simon, which was over on Kickstarter. This one raised over $1 million, 900,000 euros. And let's see what we actually finished up with here. We're going to start a little backwards with this one. When were things supposed to be delivered? February of 2022. Oof. I'm guessing, I have not heard anything on this. Now, this is the Europe only one, so take that for what you will. But this also didn't have a whole lot to go on it. It had a King of Average review, and that was pretty much it. In English, I guess. I don't know. This one seemed more area control-esque. The expansion was interesting that it had these snake guys, and I just didn't get a good sense of the flow or the gameplay with this one. And so it kind of left a lot of people scratching their heads, I think. And maybe that was just me. Maybe that was just me. And I don't really know. This is going to be a very interesting test of the market. It's Europe only. So are we going to see if this really turns out to be something specific and something good? Because the Simon one, as I talked about distinctively, was not the same type of game as this. The Simon one was more of almost like a skirmish game, a one versus all, if you will. And this one is not that. And so from that aspect of things, I really don't know how to compare these. I almost prefer this one, but I don't really like either of these skirmish style games with more of an area control aspect. And so that's why I didn't really have a huge interest in them. People are like doing swaps. People are doing like forwarding things with this. There's unexpected events, storylines in this. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on with this one. I was actually happy that this one was Europe only because I didn't even have to think about it then. But we saw that it's February. So where are things at right now? Even after I knew it was going to be Europe only, I really wasn't looking at it heavily. Like, I like the idea of this IP, but I didn't really see myself backing it no matter who was putting it out. They say here with this update, a couple days before me filming this, that they have a prototype, the production prototypes. Okay, so they dive in, they give you some pictures, and unboxing. Okay, great. Shipping. So they're not shipped yet. So they're making sure basically this is good quality wise. So it could be, logistically, printing wise. If they don't have it all printed yet, then, I mean, you could be talking 1 to 2 months to get it printed. Then you could be talking 2 months or, 1.5 in there to get it shipped, and then another month on top of that. So you could be easily talking the early of 2023 if it's not fully printed, because it doesn't seem to be fully printed, just the fact that this is the production prototype. So I don't really know what that means, if it's actually like done, or this is just like their early copy, or if this is the one where they're really going through the fine-tooth comb and saying this is final approval. So depending on which one that is, take plus or minus 4 to 6 weeks. If it is the final, then printing could be already happening. If it's not, then printing is going to happen afterwards. So that's where you could see the date flux. I could see it being December. I could see it being January, either way. But I was probably a 4 or 5 during. I'm easily probably a 3 right now in terms of excitement or interest. Now we're just going to stick with Gamefound here. We're going to finish all the Gamefound ones because this is a big month on Gamefound. Like, this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Gamefound month ever so far. And this is Mythic Mischief, Ivy Studios. You may know them from Moonrakers. And this was sort of an abstract-esque, teen-driven library escapade, if you will. Trying to get these books in the library, trying to avoid the librarian, and using these asymmetric powers to manipulate bookshelves. Sound kind of corny? Yeah, it does sound kind of corny, but the gameplay is there. Now, the problem I had was I didn't think all of the teams were as, I found a couple teams when I played it, when I had the demo version, the preview copy, of just being stronger or more to my liking. And that was sort of hard for me to tell, was, were they actually stronger, or was I just more, up here with that type of power or asymmetry that it had versus another one. And so it was a really solid campaign, but I won't lie, it was sort of an abstract dressed up, really. And so with Ivy Games, you're getting deluxification with that aspect of things. I mean, these easily could have been cubes, and you wouldn't notice a whole lot of difference. In fact, it almost makes it easier at times if they were cubes. So yeah, you can combine, you can play. I mean, this is really a 1v1 game though. And pre-campaign, I was probably 7-ish. Post-campaign, I was probably about the same. Just because I felt like 1 or 2 of the teams I really clicked with more. And it's hard for me to tell you like how you're going to click with them, because you may have a different mindset than me. And so one of the teams may be like super great for you, and it may not be super good for another person. So that was more of the issue right there. It is going to be delivered in June 2022. I think they're actually, I remember this, I just saw an update for this. They are delivering right now, I believe. Soundtrack delivery, organization, dice matching, unboxing, shipping is ongoing. Yeah, there you go. So at the time of me doing this, people are getting their games, and that's pretty much all around the world. Let's see. Yeah, that's Mythic Mischief. Quick covery there, because I'm very familiar with it, and it's shipping. So that's pretty much on target from Ivy Games, which is a good sign if you're going into Moonrakers now. So Legend Academy, this was one where when it was originally announced from Eldorado Games, I was really excited, and then I saw what it was, and then I was kind of like, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in this one. Like, so I went from like a 7 to a 3 really quickly from that aspect. But clearly I was one of the few that did that, because you had 7,000 people still getting in this competitive deck building, crafting, also somehow worker placement, adventure style open book game, because you're taking a lot of your folk lore heroes, that's going to be in the bloopers at the end there in case you were missing what I edited out, and utilizing them in sort of an unmatched style vibe. I take that back. Unmatched in the sense that they're using these characters, not anything like the actual unmatched gameplay. Right here, August 2022. We'll just skip right to that, right? Let's go to the original campaign page so we can see a little more details. 212,000. This was one that was getting really hyped from a lot of these people about it beforehand. And it just sort of fell flat, I think, with a lot of people about what they were expecting and the upgrades that you're doing with these characters. It was really kind of weird. You're getting 3 exclusive expansions as well, but this is a combination of things, again, I think that people were looking at and going, I need to try this before I'm going to buy it. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I mean, I look at things like Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I go, well, if I wouldn't have tried Dune, like as getting it in a trade, like I never would have bought it on my own, because the weird combination of the deck building and the worker placement is very divisive, and even small nuances in changes of how you're going to incorporate that can make people like really like Arnak and not like Dune at all, or really like Dune and not like Arnak at all. And I feel like this could be the same thing. And without having the ability to try it out as intensively firsthand or hands-on, I guess, that would be my issue. 16 replayable adventures, which I've found when I hear replayable adventures, I'm one of those people that also does not like to rewatch movies. Like, I don't rewatch movies that I've seen, right? Except if they're like classics, because I know what has happened. I just played a game tonight. I'm not going to tell the name of it, but it sort of has scenario-based driven things. And even when I played the scenario the second time, like I still knew what I needed to do more, which kind of spoiled it. But at the same time, I still didn't win. So how do you feel about that? Like, I knew what to do and I still couldn't win. So that's a whole nother issue in and of itself. But I could kind of game the game potentially. Now, if my partner also wouldn't have been the 8-year-old, they probably would have gamed it a little bit easier. But that's the issue that I have with these. And 16 is a ton. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this game has much less than 16 that I was playing. So for the price point, I don't even know what the price point was. Deluxe edition, $69. Yeah, it's probably easily your money worth. And it's just whether or not these skill trees, and that's sort of my problem with Too Many Bones, right? You're going to min-max, and there's going to be maybe a better maximum for one of these than the rest. And so if you find that out, are you going to do that same thing every single time? Or really, is it going to be scenario driven? And I have no clue based on what information was out there if that was really going to be the case, because scenarios, right? Scenarios, those are hit or miss. I love the characters, love the idea of it, love the upgrading system like this. With this and Chronicles of Drunagor, it's a great system. I just need to try it out first before I can actually feel like I'm comfortable with it from that aspect. So, like I said, I went from a 7 to a 3 pretty quickly from that aspect. Let's see where things are at, though, in terms of updates. So we get to the July update here on the campaign page, and that's not a great sign. Playtesting like crazy, different combinations of scenarios and characters. That's the problem with that. You've got 16 scenarios, you've got to balance them all. You've got characters that are asymmetric with upgradable powers that are going to be different every time you play them. That's yeah. And so where are they at? Yeah, they're not anywhere close. They're doing the tooling for the minis. They're not going to be anywhere near before the end of 2022, which is going to be way over. Like, I'd say, you're looking at probably like the beginning of Q2 for 2023 if I had to guess with this one right now. So this might be a one I'm hopefully not talking about in August 2023, but I could see myself easily talking about it when it hits, backers' hands in the beginning, or the first 4 or 5 months of 2023. So there you go, Legend Academy, Eldorado. Now let's hop over to Kickstarter for the last two. Spires End, the standalone expansion, Hildegard. I had never heard of this game until like a couple months before this Kickstarter campaign launched, and I looked at this one heavily as a solo cooperative, but it's really solo, sort of like Halls of Hegar, which is on Kickstarter right now. I really looked at it more like that aspect, and the original is really sort of a raving, under-the-radar cult classic, if you will, in that sense. Not cult classic, but you know what I'm saying. For an indie-style solo, different doing things mechanistically and thematically incorporation. So it raised $325,000 for a solo game with 7,500 people. That's insane. That's insane. Now, $80 gets you both of them. I think they were selling for something like 60 or 70 on the secondary market. So getting just a copy of the game for $40 is, or seems like, a great deal from that aspect. I just don't know if I would ever play it cooperative, because it's sort of like that storyboard chapter game where you're both making shared decision making. And if I'm going to do shared decision making, I'd just rather play two-handed, right? They run through how you're going to be playing it. And this was one where I actually debated about it because of the pedigree that the first one had really had to offer. My only question with this one is it going to be a 2.0 version? The standalone version, the second time around, are you taking the criticisms and, addressing them and patching holes in the second time so that it doesn't have the first one's issues? So do you really need the first one if you skipped it and you're just going in at this point and just getting Hildegard? So I love this art. I love the incorporation. I mean, that's a scarecrow shooting corn guns. So that's awesome. This is one that, like, if I could trade for this at some point, I probably would do it. But I just couldn't buy it. Even though I'm probably going to pay again, because it's only probably going to be in the secondary market, probably going to pay, 100% increase or 50% increase at least. So yeah, July 2022. I haven't heard anything about this one recently. So It's sort of flown under a lot of people's radar, and it sort of has faded to obscurity since then. So I'm glad I had it on my list still, so that I could check it out and remind myself of something that I missed out on. I was probably a 6 or so, maybe a 5 or 6 campaign now. I'm maybe like a 6, 7 now. So one of those few rare ups in terms of the hype. Let's see where things are at with the August update. Manufacturing is complete. They're arranging getting things shipped. Okay. Late September, October, unless you're in Asia, you'll get it earlier. So you'll have it before the end of the year, sometime in quarter 4. That's not too bad over the anticipated, right? So July, yeah, 3-4 months late. It's about what I'd expect nowadays. Actually, slightly less because, like I said in the other videos, 6 months or more is usually where I'm expecting things. Last up, we'll talk about Black Rose Wars Rebirth from Ludus Magnus. So I really wanted to get this game. It sort of creeped up on me, sort of a 6, 7, and then sort of even an 8 in the campaign. And I said, I really kind of want this game, but this is a game that I feel like, from what I've heard and what I've read, it would be best for me if it was like an hour, 75-minute game. And what it ends up turning out to be is more like a 2.5 hour, even 3-hour game. And so with these mechanisms and the asymmetric mages and the powers and the factions, I love that. I love the take that. I love the chaos. I love all of those elements. But I can't do it in 3 hours. I can't do it in 2.5 hours even. And with that, it's going to be very similar to something like Arydia, where it's going to sit on my shelf and collect dust. So I really had to bite my tongue and not back this one, if that makes sense. That really doesn't make sense, but you know where I'm going with it at least. The only issue is that you can't get some of the exclusive stuff the first time around, and Ludus Magnus in the first campaign really kind of snuffed the shipping up, and before shipping wasn't a shipping issue. So take that for what you will. They have a whole bunch of expansions. You can get a whole bunch of the stuff, and all of these factions are new ones. You've got a whole bunch of different ways of playing it, and just elementals, and just everything that's just kind of cool about this game. I love every idea of this game, and I would love to play this game. I'm just not sure it's one of those that I need to own. That's really where it ended up for me. I would love to play it. I'd love to play somebody else's copy. You've got all these different schools of magic: nightmare, technomancy, alchemy, shamanic, hex, forgotten. I mean, they aren't as cool as some of the elemental ones that are in the first one, but they're still cool. So, I don't know. Again, it's probably way overpriced. It's another huge box miniature game, and so I just couldn't swallow the pill as well from that side of things. A little bit of exclusivity, I think. Because I don't think this is, again, went to wide retail. Walk Like an Egyptian, Last Dynasty, North Winds. This is where I really don't like it. This is all actually, and these are all like stretch goals, I think. So this is stuff that you're getting on top. And, say what you will about Ludus Magnus, they give you your values worth in terms of the core pledge, just like Awakened Realms, even though, you worry about the balance, you worry about the scope, you worry about the production, you worry about the timetable. But there's a ton of cool stuff going on with this, and that's the other reason. Like the stretch goal box from the previous one, it goes for like more than the game itself, because of all of the exclusives or all of the semi-exclusives, because I won't use Kickstarter exclusive because I'm not sure they were Kickstarter exclusive, but they were just like not really sold. Weirdly enough, this is probably the one or one of the highest on this video easily of ones I regret not backing. So will I regret it like a year or two from now? That's really more of the question. I have no idea. Tons of money you can spend on it though. You could spend a couple, $300-$400 by the end of all this, but core pledge with stretch goals, core pledge. There you go. So where are things at though? Let's check. For September 2022, as it said on the side there, in case you couldn't see it behind my head, we have an update from about 2 weeks ago, and they are going to update us on all 3 of their games. Okay, that's never a great sign when you update me on more than one. Okay, I don't like I'm skimming this, and I'm not really seeing what I want to see. Okay, Black Rose Rebirth, aiming to ship it by the first half of 2023. By the first half, so you could be talking 10 months from now, because that still falls within the first half, right? So that's a lot. That's a lot. And this is what I worried about with Legend Academy 2. You have the playtesting that has to go into a thing like this. And if you don't, then a crappy game is a crappy game forever, right? And so if you're going to do it, you do it right, but it's going to take you time. And now you've also got The Breach, which funded over a month ago on crowdfunding, and that they want to deliver right after this one. And they want to deliver, I'm assuming, Nova Aetos Renaissance right before this one. So yeah, they're not going to have wave 2 of that one done until the first half. So they're basically going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they try and deliver all 3 of these together and shave on shipping, which is probably going to peeve a lot of people, especially from the first 2 campaigns, if one of these ends up dragging the other 2 behind them. So I don't know. That's tricky. It's tricky. They're still doing wave 2 of Dungeonology, and they're still doing Chamber of Wonders. They've still got Divide at Impera. So they've got a lot of stuff going on here. That's a lot of stones you're juggling. I'd feel a little bit nervous, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of those delays things and they just decide to ship them all together to save on prices, which is going to make them all even more delayed than they would be otherwise. So take that for what you will, but hopefully it's a good game when it does finally reach backers' hands sometime in 2023? Question mark, he said. Okay, there you go. That's it. That is the look back at August. Hopefully it was interesting. What did you back? Did you back any of those? Do you feel regrets about backing any of those? Do you feel regrets about not backing any of those? Thankfully, again, this is another one of those months where I don't really have a whole lot of regrets. I really don't. And I'm really okay with that. Like I've gotten a lot of those, right? Like I don't regret not getting it. And there are even, well, I don't want to say even fewer, but there are also a very low amount that I regret backing. As someone who is not a collector, as someone who does not do this full time, as someone who does not base their living or their main focus on this side of things, I feel very good about it from a general hobbyist standpoint. So hopefully you do too. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully my weekly roundups giving you as much information as I can also prevents some of the FOMO and prevents you from buying stuff that you shouldn't in the first place. But it's a whole nother conversation as well, because we all got plenty of that too. Ain't that the truth? Okay, I'm in that comment. I don't like it. Stay classy. See you around. Thanks for watching. Good job, Cowardboard. You're taking a lot of your full core